Yeah, it's great fun to be here. So we hope we can make it interesting for you all.
Really what we wanted to get out of this, and it was Amy's idea, which I think was a great idea. You know, what is sketching? I think Amy had seen the sketches that I was putting in on LinkedIn. But really, we're sort of, why do we sketch? And I think it was a question Jonathan in particularly raised. You know, what is the purpose of a sketch?
Yeah, I mean, quite often, I mean, things have moved on a long way since we were students, when everything was hand drawn. And so you had to draw, and you had to draw everything, perspectives, axonometrics, you name it. And we feel that it's an essential tool, you know, for any architect. You never know when you're going to be either with a client. There's a lovely sketch Neil did. There you go. And you may have to communicate an idea either to a client or a contractor on site. And the quickest way to do that is to get your felt tip or your pencil and to do a sketch. It's a great skill. We both believe very strongly in it. And when we're interviewing graduates, you know, potential candidates to join our practice, we always want to see some hand drawing, because it tells us so much about you. And not everybody's going to have the same style, or, you know, and that's fine. But, you know, part of this is about, we're going to show you some sketching styles. Mine's slightly different to Neil's, his is slightly different to mine. But it's about finding a style that you're comfortable with, but develop it. It's like playing a musical instrument. You've got to rely on some muscle memory when you're in a situation where you might be put on the spot in a site meeting, and the contractor is questioning a detail, and you need to do a quick overlay or discuss how it's going to be amended, what the issues are. You as the architect, you know, should be confident and comfortable to lead on that discussion. So,
and actually, it's one of the biggest things we were talking about. What's the difference between an architect and a quantity surveyor, an engineer, all these other disciplines, and that you will work through in your careers? But in reality, the biggest difference you've got is that ability to communicate through your hand. And as much as we're going to show you lots of different sketches and different types, don't underestimate the roughest of sketches. And I put this one on the screen, which is a project we're working on, which is some townhouses. And this was actually myself just trying to doodle to communicate to one of the architects how we might vary some of the shapes and boxes. So what we were looking at is the projections here. Do we go horizontal across? But you can see here, they can be really quite basic. We've put this on a little graph pad that we work, and we find them really useful. So one of the other main lessons I think I want to get through to all the people here is, it doesn't have to be neat. It doesn't have to be finished.
No.
Rough is good. Look at the little notes on there. They're almost aid memoirs. There's another one when I was just trying to work in my brain. So don't be afraid to have really, and I call them rough, and you keep them. So when you're doing your projects at college, the workings out, the explanation of what you've done, keep them. I think people are so obsessed about, oh, I can't show people it's a really, really rough sketch, but actually it's really, really vital. So what we want to do is just show you a few projects, just in terms of the process that goes on and the different scales. And I think Jonathan's going to look at, is it the cottage or the Beamish one?
I'll look at this. It was a bungalow extension we did. So we'll start off with a couple of smaller projects, and then we'll go to some larger ones. So can everybody see that? I hope you can.
No, it's not come on.
Is it not come on? Is it not?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. Hang on a second. I think that's because I have to go into...
Remember the training.
I know, he's let us all down, hasn't he?
I thought this would work perfectly.
Mine was working fine.
Yours was working fine. Well, do you want to start with yours then? And I'll sort mine out.
Right. What I want to start with is, and we'll get it on. Right. Here's a little sketch. We've been working on a surgery. This one's in Keswick. And again, when you're drawing at college, we often set very roughly, and I appreciate with SketchUp, with the Revit, you can often create those block shapes. And if that's what you're more familiar with, nothing wrong with that. Create that shape. But these are all done freehand. and we just create that overlay of a drawing, and then basically you can then start drawing on top. And really, it's up to you to decide the various mediums that you want to use. I tend to use a couple of felt tips styles, and you can very much then start drawing away. And don't be afraid of lines crossing over, or, oh, I haven't quite got that bit right. You can always work. That's the character, that's the charm. So what I really want to get everyone doing is create your own style. And as Jonathan said at the start, we both do it slightly differently. His are better, by the way. Don't know about that. So I often start with a sort of a line like that. Let's get a couple of windows on. So by all means, copy people's styles, but turn it into your own method. So you've almost got your own unique signature. Jonathan's analogy with playing guitars. So look, slightly thicker felt tip there. Just build up the roof a little. And emphasize some of the lines. You don't need to emphasize all of them, but very quickly you can start building them up, and a bit like one of the famous cooking shows.
Here's one I prepared early.
Here's one I prepared early. And very quickly that rough sketch has been translated, so effectively it's 3D form. Now, if someone might say to me, is that drawing to scale? No, it's not at all. So don't be inhibited by that. This is about creating a flavour, and this particular client said they wanted something to look like it was Lake Districty. That was literally my brief. So is it a modern piece of architecture? No, because the client doesn't want that. They want something contextual. But if you notice, a little bit of shading on the roof done in pencil, slightly stronger lines for the roof, a little bit of shading on the windows. And interesting, when Jonathan comes onto his, Jonathan tends to use a felt tip in the windows, where I tend to use the pencils. So again, just different styles. Little people, even down to drawing the caravan, the ambulance, just having a bit of fun, really. And another aspect of the drawing, and again, probably not one for today, develop your own script style. And again, that's something that we were both taught at college. Making sure your handwriting is clear. It's not how I write day to day, but it's just the way that you develop through your careers. And again, Jonathan's got a lovely script as well.
Thank you. Yeah. So shall I jump in on? I'll see. I think I know what I did wrong last time, so we'll go with, we'll try this. Right, now tell me if this works. It probably won't.
Yes, it's working.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, it's a fairly small project. I mean, you can see we're just on a flat white Formica table. The priceless bits of this is we call it our hand revver, is get some masking tape, and all you need is a couple of pens. So
there you go.
That's a more expensive pencil. So it's very cheap. Somebody actually was joking in the office and said it's Revity-like, and we kind of latched onto that. So this was a fairly modest bungalow we did for a client a few years ago, built in the 1950s. They wanted to expand it significantly, so I just set up some tracing paper and did a hand kind of sketch over that in pencil. Once you've done that, you can dispense with the photograph that you just took on your phone, and you've got a framework. And a bit like Neil, I'm just going to sketch over this. And
I'm just reading the messages as come down. So we've got Oxford Brooks. I saw Saudi Arabia there. Oh, do it first year at Newcastle. So hello, nice. Keep passing messages through. I'll do the DJ bit while Jonathan's
absolutely
drawing.
So as Neil was doing a few months ago, it's all just about getting yourself in a relaxed position, get it stable so it's not going to keep moving around, and then just start building it up. And the classic technique is to kind of wobble the line a little bit. So you're never going to draw a true straight line unless you're very computerized.
And you don't want it parallel. That wobble is character.
So just very quickly, I mean, I tend to use, this is just a fairly bog standard Pentel.
Yeah, these pens are perfectly normal, and we'll go through the different types that we use at the end of the session.
Don't cost a great deal. Just put in the ridge tile there, and it's little details. Just put some lines on there. Just build the detail up. You can see I've sketched the outline of a tree, And again, there's various ways of doing this. I mean, I tend to do, it's years of kind of just practice. I'll build up the leaves, you know, and the kind of branches for some foreground like that. But equally, if that's not your style, you might build it up kind of with a thicker pen and, you know, just kind of get that massed in there. You know, that's perfectly fine. And it's all about, you know, communication at the end of the day. Oh, we've got you in there now.
We've got both of them on.
All right, okay.
But what we're saying then, I'll quickly take that one off, is they can be done very, very quickly. So don't worry about that. Right, back onto yours, Jonathan.
Yeah, I just need to minimize that, don't I? There we go. So again, and
I think you're off the screen again.
Am I on screen, guys?
Not your sketch, just you.
Just me, right? What happened there? I think Neil jumped in, didn't he?
Oh, we should be allowed to build both, shouldn't we?
I don't know whether we can. Hang on, here we go. Now you're on. What can you see, guys?
I can just see you still, Jonathan. I can't see the.
Okay, well, hang on. Let's share.
That's
there.
it.
Is that it?
Perfect.
There we go.
Right. Okay, so we're learning as we go along. So tech's great, isn't it?
Another message from Lena, living in London, from Iraq, studying at Westminster universities. I like this. I'm going to read out the different universities.
So all I'm doing is just with the same weight of pen, and you know, it's about getting some depth to windows. So think about a casement window, how many lines you're going to see, just like drawing an elevation. And then, as Neil was saying earlier, I think it's from a Macintosh that, I tend to get a thick pen and I'll just kind of block those windows in so that you get in the solid and void very quickly. So you start to see that, you know, and the beauty about tracing paper is you can keep flicking up and I know many of you will use this anyway, but it's just such a cheap and effective way.
Just keep practicing.
Of developing a sketch. So we're going to whiz along here, as Neil was doing, and we can.
But you see how he puts the windows in a heavy black? That's just Jonathan's style.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, you might do a roof heavier, but practice with the line weights, and we'll come back onto that.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about a couple of things as we go, because it's not about it's more about giving just a flavour of the scheme. So this is a brick building, as you can probably remember, you know, from the photograph. So we continued with the brick theme, but that's not necessarily important at this stage because you're just trying to get a feel for the solid and void, and the client wanted, you know, a timber garage door, so we kind of just wiggle that in. And, you know, I think Neil was a little bit quicker than me on his lines, but it's just about putting enough detail in, you know, and I'm doing this fairly quickly, and then we'll have a sweep of the pavement coming round, you know, and we're just approximating that in. And then you might, in the foreground, just put some of those joints in, not necessarily even all of them, you know, and then a bit of texture, you know, to kind of just,
That's Laura from Northumbria.
Hello, Laura from Northumbria.
I like these messages.
So, you know, you're just kind of building it up and just, you know, enjoy it as well, because I find that when you've set something up like this, just an outline, as you're drawing freehand, you actually start to make design decisions about the number of windows in this kind of clerestory staircase that we put in, and you just start to build it up.
Scylla from Turkey, studying architecture. Is that Bill Kent University?
Wow.
Thanks for joining us. But you see what Jonathan's doing, it's very quickly. And the value of these, particularly not just when you're at college, but when you move into practice, Revit's got a place. We use Revit here. We use AutoCAD, 3D Max, Enscape, all these packages. But actually, that skill of being able to draw and to be able to draw in front of a client, it is really good. So when you're at college, the ability to doodle in front of your tutor and explain your thoughts on your latest project is really, really good. I can remember when we were at college that we had a German lecturer called Heiner Hoffmann.
I remember Heiner.
Absolutely fantastic artist. Wasn't an architect. And the one thing he probably taught us more than anything was just have the confidence. Yeah. And I know that sounds really glib to say, but I used to feel quite inhibited from drawing in the studios.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually used to like to draw in front of people, and I would go back to my home base and draw there.
Yeah.
And that was probably the age I was at. Whereas now, just have the enjoyment, and as Jonathan's demonstration, if you have the odd line going out of place,
it really doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter. That's actually part of it, and I think people often think, "Oh, I need to rubber, and I'll rub that out." No, not at all. Don't worry about it.
So I think, you know, we've probably got enough in there now. But again, as Neil said, I think one of the things that, you know, you could start to see that shaping up, and I'll just do this for speed, because I think it's really important. And how you do this, I know Neil's technique is slightly different to mine, but it just gives you that solid and void, you know, and suddenly you start to get this three-dimensional aspect. Another little trick is, you know, the roof's looking a bit, you know, so let's throw it forward, and a very simple kind of, you know, sky, and maybe throw some.
And hopefully you can see the sort of arts and craft inspiration of turning a very bland bungalow, albeit at the hands with a skillful architect. And actually, that particular client was delighted with that project.
Delighted. So, you know, it starts to throw the building forward then, and then maybe, you know, we know it's a tiled roof or a slate roof, but we don't necessarily want to draw all that, but we might just want to.
Oh, we've got a couple of people coming saying interloper from Farnham, an architecture fan, more than happy with that. And Max in year 10. Oh, that's nice. And a career in architecture. Go for it, Max. That's all I can say. Absolutely. It's a great career.
It's turned into a radio chat show. This.
I know, it's good,
fantastic.
Isn't it? Yeah. An alternative career for me.
So again, it's about having a feel. At this stage of design, concept design, it's not about a finished CGI image, and we will move on to that, how the value of this is so important, because particularly when you're presenting to a planning panel, one of the local authorities, when you show CGIs and Revit models, it looks very fixed, and sometimes you get a different reaction to that because you're there for consultation, so this should not be a finished item. So one of the beauties of hand drawing like this is it's very clearly a sketch, and you can very clearly be saying, this is the way we think the development is going, these are the sorts of materials, these are the forms.
And if you notice, we focused initially on the felt tips, but again, find your medium, pencil, felt tip. So I'll just swap to a different one while Jonathan's doodling away on that one.
Yeah, I'll carry on with this, and I'll come out of this then.
I can swap over.
Can you do that? Oh, there you go. Fantastic.
Right. So that was felt tip with Jonathan working away on this. Again, I've put this on, and it's to show how rough and ready. So often when you're drawing with a trusty pencil, just come up with the rough shapes. This is a new build house in Northumberland that's being developed, and it's pretty similar in some ways to many of the projects you'll get at college. An engineer client who's wanting to do a super innovative insulated house, and I was just trying to play with the shapes of the roof, all done in pencil, just playing along on there. So that enabled me then to start trying to create something that was more than just shapes. Just, well, how do these roofs work? And this is sort of showing it in a courtyard format, which actually is not quite how it's finished. But the little drawings here that start to explain the stone, the timber. And again, when you're at college, I think you were often shy of holding back these sketches, but actually these are the really important ones, so that we both do external lecturing coming in, and actually that's when you actually understand what someone's doing. So I would put real value on these in your presentation to explain, so that actually the journey of your design is probably more important sometimes than the end result. Yes, you want to try and get to a finished product. So what we did from there, we then moved that one to that drawing. Now that's all just done in pencil, and to be honest, I can't remember why I started drawing those ones in pencil rather than ink, just for the sheer fun. But again, just drawn in one single pencil, giving a little bit of line weight to the roof. That timber cladding shown there, the metal roof. So again, different line weights can start to show things. So there's just vertical lines hint at one material, which is different to that wider spacing shown on the roofing. Bit of texture for the grass, and again, Slightly different to Jonathan's take on the windows, but just a subtle sort of wobbly line to indicate glass and shading, and little people. And I'll mention little people because actually they give a real sense of scale.
Absolutely.
So when you're doing drawings like this, it's quite important to be able to develop people. There's people with hats, little balloon on. Drawing people gives it a real sense of scale. Now I've drawn those bigger than the house. In reality, it would be more that sort of shape. So again, the art of actually learning how to draw stylistically people, prams, chairs, old folks, it suddenly gives a sense, because otherwise you don't really get a feel for what size that house is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to try and move back. That's when we'll probably lose you. I think you need to log back on again.
I need to log back into it. Hang on, let me just see if I can pop that up. Right. Are we back? Yeah?
Yeah, you're back.
So while Neil's been chatting, I've just been throwing a few little bit more details, just little details, you know, a couple of little of the decorative ironwork on the gate next door.
That's Nana from University of Kent. I'm enjoying this.
And what it's missing is, as Neil's just said perfectly, is, you know,
a sixth former there looking to study architecture. I'm not sure where you're from. You're year 12, so is that
year
lower
12,
six or
that's
upper six?
lower six.
Lower six.
Welcome.
Yep.
So, you know, there again, you know,
look at those lovely people coming in.
Just a couple of people.
But you see what a difference that makes to that image. Suddenly you get an idea of the sense of people. And if you notice, Jonathan and I do them a bit ghostly, with the head separate. But again, just play around until you get your own style.
I mean, there's a famous architect, Le Corbusier, who had a very stylized human.
And people like Ted Cullinan used to have a lovely drawing style. So he's worth looking up, actually, in terms of, it was a very talented architect, but actually his drawings were super, very evocative, very clever drawings.
Absolutely. So that is, hopefully this is
Amelia from Arts University in Bournemouth.
Giving you an idea of just some little bits of detail, which kind of just bring.
While Jonathan's working on that, we're going to swap back again.
Okay.
Oops.
Are you jumping in there, are you? Well, I'm going to just carry on because I'm having far too much fun.
I think it's not swapping back.
Right, well, what I'll need to do then is just bear with us, folks.
Oh, there it is.
There you go.
And I need to reduce the size a bit. Right, I put this one up just to, while Jonathan's adding bits on that drawing. This one's a sketch of two Saxon churches, actually. It's the only village in England with two Saxon churches up in Northumberland, St. Peter's and St. Andrew's. But again, it's to start emphasising what Jonathan's doing, albeit at speed, some of that texture that we started to talk about. So it's how do you draw things? Well, that's slate. So all I've done there is one single felt tip, splashed a little bit of a thicker felt tip on the edges, and then a little bit of grey. And suddenly you get but you don't need to colour the whole thing grey, and you don't need to have the thicker felt tip all the way along, which is clearly different from the stonework. And then a subject that Jonathan started to talk about was drawing trees. Now, I think they're quite difficult to do, actually.
Yeah.
This picture was drawn in May, so there was a little bit of foliage coming out on the trees, but it still was quite see-through. So really, I quite like drawing the sort of skeletal form of the trees and then being a bit playful. And to be honest, you don't need to make sure it's exactly accurate. Just give it that sense of shape and form. I'll just move that down so you see the tree a bit easier. So again, splashing out on it, just 2 or 3 felt tips, one grey, one black, and a little bit of hatching. And then in the background, I've given it a slightly more dense shading, and that gives you some foreground and definition to the drawing. And there's the hedge in the background. And actually, bizarrely, we've actually recently won the job to do the church conversion. And one of the things we could show them at the interview is that actually I knew the church because I'd sat in the graveyard and drawn one Sunday afternoon. But again, that sketch took me excuse me, about an hour 10 on a nice sunny day, sitting there with a Kit Kat and a flask of coffee. I think my wife being happy for having me out the house for an hour, but it's a really relaxing thing to do. But what I'm showing you is just those texture elements, which is exactly what Jonathan's coming on to, and I'll bring you back to Jonathan.
I'm pleased you've taken control of this, because you seem to know what you're doing. Just on that point, Neil mentioned doing that sketch in an hour. We once interviewed, she actually works for us now, actually. It was very key in the interview. I'll just put my wee sketch up on there. In Poland, to even get into architecture school, you are given a drawing exercise to do. So you get up to the university on the day of your interview, and you are given an unknown building. So you've had no foreknowledge of this. You're given an hour to go and draw a building of their choosing in the city somewhere, and you're given an hour to do it. Now, when we saw these sketches,
they were fabulous.
They were absolutely fabulous. And I was looking at them, and you've just seen how kind of quickly I've sketched that, but there was a lot of detail in this sketch. It was a classical civic building. I was looking at the perspective, I was looking at the lines, the shading, the textures, and thinking this is absolutely amazing. And then to hear that it was drawn in an hour under pressure, I think it impressed us beyond words almost. It was
and we took her on, and she's been great.
Absolutely. And
so don't underestimate the skill of those manual drawings in your portfolios, because I'm just looking at the people I've seen there. Sean, a diploma from Oxford Brookes, and Benjamin, sixth former from Cheltenham. So whatever stage you're at, and particularly to people like Sean there, diploma, get those manual drawings in your portfolio. Yes, we want to see the Revit, we want to see your designs, but really we want to see you pick this up and draw. And one of our trade secrets, we'll actually make you draw in an interview here.
Yeah, actually, and other people might do that. They might just say, okay, well, here's a graph pad, just sketch me something. So that I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it does happen, if you're comfortable and confident with your drawing and sketching, then that'll go a long way.
So while you're swapping there, so the sort of thing that we might do while Jonathan's drawing there, we might say to someone, right, there we go, there's a cliff edge, there's some ground at the bottom.
I remember you doing this one, actually.
There's a couple of people, design me a house on the side of the edge. So we might say, right, we'll give it a platform off there. What sort of roof on there? And it's just have the confidence to start drawing away. So just get into the habit of sketching, because you might get someone like me at an interview saying, oh, let's see what your drawing skills are like. and very quickly, so as what we're showing there is two different speeds. Jonathan's more measured because he's working on a definite building. Clearly this is make-believe, but if you're sat in front of a client, so I'm pretending all you guys out there are my client.
This is somebody who wants a nice penthouse property overlooking the ocean, yeah.
And very quickly, if actually we take those people off, so we have a boat.
Yeah, stick them in a boat, that'd be good. That's actually that's a really good point, actually, because it's all about context as well. I mean, straight away from that, very, very quickly, in a matter of seconds, you can see that, okay, we know where we are. It's an ocean site. It's a very steep kind of incline down towards the water. And we can see that is something which is trying to maximize the views out. There's some structure expressed, a very modern solution, perhaps. You can see that there's a lot of glazing straight away, and it's all with a few lines. So, you know, it's very, very key to be able to sketch. That's clearly, hopefully that is the message. I'll probably...
And actually, another thing I was going to say, if you notice, I'm left-handed, Jonathan's right-handed.
It's true.
For all us left-handers, I'll put it out there. You can see my hands always get filthy because I'm always running across. I can't use a fountain pen. Never have been able to. So you're right. And so I'm conscious. So I'm always working up and around a drawing. You get a piece of paper underneath your hand sometimes if you're drawing, if you're a left-hander.
Yes.
So don't worry about that. But it doesn't matter whether you're left or right. And actually, there's studies being shown that actually there's far greater percentage of left-handers go into design industries.
Is that right?
It's about it's 4 or 5 times the national average of qualified architects. So again, so swapping the image back.
Yeah.
Actually, before we swap back, actually what I'll show you is again the value of what this sketch is. This was done for a little competition entry. Again, a manual drawing with a bit of colour thrown on. So don't be mix the mediums. So manual drawing being coloured off in Photoshop. And this was to actually show the different number of renewable energies. So you've got heat pumps, rainwater harvesting, you've got ventilation, PVs arrays. So again, a very quick sketch, and we were just trying to demonstrate to a client how this simple shed might work, but in a very quick illustration. And it's a really effective way of just taking that forward. Otherwise, you could be doing a very complex drawing and the client saying, well, I don't quite understand. But again, just being playful with the steam trains and the internal trains itself. Pass you back.
Okay.
Excuse me.
How long does that take? Not long. Right.
What else we got there?
Okay.
The O's with the dots remind me of Charles Rennie Mackintosh. Yes, you're quite right.
Absolutely. I remember buying some prints on a trip to Glasgow when I was a student, and there were some of his monochrome drawings like this, and I think, yeah, if I'm honest, I was probably very influenced by it in a trip to the Hill House.
But again,
well. Yeah,
it's a very clear, recognisable drawing style. I think someone's saying me, but just again, practice your handwriting. It doesn't really matter how you do it.
absolutely.
So again, got Jonathan's image going, and I think we'll probably come to Leeds in a few minutes, won't we?
Yeah.
I'm going to share a different one as we moved before. This is a scheme. Now this drawing, if I can find the photograph, what we did here. Don't be afraid to overdraw on a photograph. It's not cheating. I've heard people say that before. But if you overdraw on a photograph, and there it is like that, don't be tempted to try and draw every single line in place. Again, treat it as trying to create that character. So what we did in this particular one was, again, it's a slightly more complex drawing, but we overlaid it, created a very rough schematic. And again, you can work on this, you can doodle, and we were trying to create an entrance area. So here's entrance people, the banners, and a modern piece of architecture. So we used that drawing. This was for a client presentation to produce this. But in reality, if we tried to model that up in a Revit BIM form, it would have taken a lot longer, and it wasn't what the client was wanting. We were trying to give an impression to the Heritage Lottery, just like you would be doing for a crit in whatever year you are, of it gave an essence, a style, a thinking process. And again, this one was a mixture of pen and pencil.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we want to come on to, I think now, is probably a live project that we've got in the office, which is a university project in Leeds. So we'll just share back.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, someone's putting some photos.
Great.
London Bridge, I can see.
Yeah, I mean, if we have time, if people do have some sketches and images, then
that'd be
perhaps
great.
we can do some shared screening, Amy. Just so, yeah, as Neil's mentioned,
Yeah, that would be great. Sorry.
That,
Yeah, that would
yeah,
be good.
brilliant. So this is a different scale of project. This is it's a 410 bed student residential scheme in the centre of Leeds, where it's a tight urban site. So again, we started off kind of very schematically. You know, part of the exercise is the client, the developer, wanted very quickly, very early on, he wanted to know numbers of beds. How am I going to get the numbers of beds on this site?
The screen of it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you see that? Okay. So there's a number of options that we were kind of we were looking at, and the beauty about tracing paper is, so that was kind of, this is where we very close to where we ended up, but we tried slightly different, more kind of restrained. Should it be stepping up towards the corner? This roadway down here is the A61. It's the main arterial road in this part.
But look at that as a drawing structure. You can see that the blocks of the base. So it's not really architecture yet, but it's building up the drawing. It's building up the scales. When you're doing your college projects, you can start to see the massing. You can see the neighbouring buildings.
Yeah.
The street patterns.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, context is absolutely critical, as Neil said. So get some of the context. I mean, we were trying to sell a larger scale building clearly to some of the more immediate context, but the wider context had some 16-story and 20-story tower blocks. So get those in, you know, get them in the background, and then you can start to play around with some textures. What are the windows going to be like? You know, there's a lot of kind of window patterns that you can do for very formal or very kind of, you know, where they alternate between different floors. At this stage, this is all just about, you know, so that's going much higher again, maybe too high in this instance. And then through a number of sketches, we finally, we kind of arrived at this as the optimum. So that's kind of one of my sketches, which was done again very quickly. You've kind of seen how the kind of the time involved in this kind of one. Okay, so my architectural assistant,
nice sketch, Alexandra,
who was a part two, recently joined us. So she produced a very quick Revit model. But the problem with a Revit model when you're trying to sell an idea early doors is when we rendered the Revit model, that's what we had. Now, okay, it's getting there, but it's not a finished item. And as I was saying earlier, if you present that to a client or a planning panel, immediately they're looking at materials. It's all a bit uniform. What's going on here? And I'm a great believer in the first thing you've got to sell is the scale and massing. So that's why my preference is to do a drawing like this.
Doesn't that look better?
I think it looks a million times better, you know.
Yeah.
And
so just like you're at college, Jonathan had to sell this to a conservation officer, a design officer. It's just like selling it at college to your tutor, to the professor,
absolutely,
to the outside architect that might be coming in to critique it.
Yeah.
That shows character, warmth. It shows thought.
Yeah. And there were some key issues that we were trying to sell. So as well as selling the building and the scale and the massing of this, how it's stepping up to the main road here, it's about the solid and void. So you could see in the very early sketch, we were playing around with where feature windows might be. Before we even start kind of thinking about, you know, where all the bedroom windows are going to be, it's where are the key corners. We've got a corner here, we've got an entrance, something going on here for an entrance, and then we've got something happening here with corners, and we're playing around with how strong those corners. This is ended up being in the final scheme, got a very sharp, acute angle. So that's kind of coming through there. And I just think that when we presented this to the planning officer, he actually parked some of the more coloured up and realistic drawings, and he said, actually, this is what I want to see. I like these drawings. Now I've seen these, I can understand what this scheme is about. So,
well, like that sketch, Eleanor, by the way, coming up Granger Street. It's nice.
That's wonderful. And so when we, you know, very quickly, very quickly, you drop that into Photoshop and you put a little bit of green on and a bit of blue, and then that went into a document, and, you know, we did a number of these. and it's a very quick and effective way of selling the scheme. And there's somewhere we went further afield, but this was all done from the Revit model, but fairly plain, simple blocks. There's the tower blocks in the background.
So it's back to that, using the different mediums again. If you
Yeah.
can develop a 3D model just by eye, great. If you need to mass it up in SketchUp, Revit, etc., like Jonathan's showing there, and then overdraw them, great. It's not cheating. It's just using all the materials you've got to hand, and get used to using the different ones in combination.
Yeah.
Just by way of contrast, because it's in those remind me of something Jonathan and I were talking about earlier in terms of, I wanted to talk about sort of techniques. Now, we've gone from one scale to the next there. So from a supersized building, this is a stone head on a church, just done in felt tip, and then the brown wash is just a tiny little bit of watercolor thrown on. But one of the key to sketching, and again, is that definition of light and play. So there isn't hard lines here. It's literally just dotting and dabbing. You can see I put some starting lines on, but again, you will be asked through your careers as architects. You might be drawing a door or a door frame or a window. Just that ability to look at detail. In fact, this gentleman's nose, if you notice, was all broken off. Hence, that's why he's got a rather broken face here. It's sometimes how I feel on a Saturday morning. But but no. So different scales, different techniques. Different colouring. So I mean, we've talked about pencils, we've talked about felt tips, and I brought these packs in, and I'll come off the screen there. So what we've got there is, I mean, I use these Faber-Castell felt tip pens. They come in different line weights, and it's something, Jonathan, you were talking about, different line weights in particular.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there's 0.1s, 0.3s. I don't know if many people use the rotary pens anymore, but in our day, that always used to be the guide of line weights. And then the felt tips. Now they're all available from W.H. Smith's. You know, £4 or £5 a pack, 4 or 5 pens in each. So not a great deal of money.
Absolutely not.
So we're seeing a few more sketches coming up there. So really, that's our tips. So really, what we're interested in now is if people have got some questions. Or Tamara, yep, like that. That's a version of mine. That's a better version coming up of the house over the cliff. So really, I'm interested if anyone's got any thoughts or observations.
You can use the chat to ask any questions, or if you want to raise your hand and come on video.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Or if you want to share any of your work, just kind of get involved, really.
Absolutely. You've probably heard enough from us.
Yeah. Have we missed anything that someone wants to ask either of us a question? I've killed it by asking a question.
I told you that would happen.
You did.
Everyone's been really quiet. I can't see any hands up.
No, I know it's quite daunting actually. But if anybody does want to jump in,
got a little image there from Maxwell. Oh, yeah. There you go. There's a question. Do you know what this tool is for?
Oh, no, I don't actually.
I'm not seeing that. I'll have to look at your screen. I'm not getting that.
Apparently it's to do with sketches. Don't know. You've got me there. I was just wondering whether it was some kind of way of mixing ink washes.
Oh yeah, here we go. Is this a trick question? Because you've won the prize.
Yeah, exactly. Do you produce digital sketches, or do you prefer the physical hand drawn ones? We do both. We do both, as we're trying to demonstrate through this. In that, we'll do manual drawings and then color wash them in the computers. We'll use digital mediums. So there's no right or wrong. End up sketching in front of clients. Yes, it's the key difference between you and every other profession. So if you're going to be an architect, be arrogant, because you're the only person that can actually draw, and boy, do people love it.
Absolutely. Other disciplines within the design team like to comment on what we're doing, but you hold the reins. If you can sketch and you can draw, then you know.
So if you can go to a meeting and just quickly do a little doodle,
absolutely,
or And it could be something as simple as just an opening in the window. That's a 10-minute sketch.
I'm just reading that question there.
So I was always under the impression that in the professional world, it's only digital sketches. No.
No. I mean, for final presentations and, you know, grandiose multi-million-pound schemes, yes, they will be there in the final presentation. But I think what we're trying to demonstrate is that, you know, throughout the design process, the ability to sketch, the ability to draw is really important. You can print something off which isn't quite looking right from the Revit model, do a print of a couple of the viewpoints that you think are important, get some tracing paper and just free it up a little bit. Just try some bold lines. It doesn't matter whether you have to do 2 overlays or 50 to get it to where you want it to be. It's a very quick and effective way.
Someone's just asking, in a big practice, how would you suggest bringing hand drawing back to the beginning stages? It shouldn't matter what office you're in, whether you're in a 1-man office or a 200 office. Sitting, drawing is the connection of the brain to the hand, and drawing.
Yeah.
Someone says, out of curiosity, what thickness does the paper in your sketchbook have to be? Different. It's in this little sketch pad, which is the one I use when I'm on holiday. These are a moleskin, by the way, very cheap. That one's a fairly fine paper. It's a slightly thicker one in these A4 ones because they take an A4 wash. But Jonathan and I, quite frankly, will draw on any paper or scrap of tracing paper.
Absolutely. I think that more.
Someone's answering Maxwell's question about.
Yeah, I saw that, and then it went off. I was intrigued. There was a French curve comment, I think.
Yeah, the tools include 2 rulers, one of which might be a French curve, and the cutouts may work.
Too posh for us, Amy, and it clearly not being used because it was still in the box. A good architect would have lost the box by now.
Has anyone got any other questions? I put a feedback form as well. If people wouldn't mind just completing that, it'll just help us for future events as well. Just pop that in the chat.
I think the key message we're saying is get yourself a pad. It's best if you can draw. It's starting to warm up now. I tend to find that I'm best if I can draw outside from sort of April through to October, and then in winter months, take some photographs, download something from Pinterest, just practice doodling. But sitting outside is the nicest way.
There's a question there about from Eleanor.
Yeah, with struggling with still using hand drawings when having to submit work all digitally. Any tips?
I think scanning it in is the key message, and then dropping it digitally into your other presentations. So I think the tip there is to just get the medium that you're using.
Yeah.
And then we often do that when we're doing drawings, and a bit like that one I showed earlier. That's a manual drawing, scanned in and then coloured.
Yeah.
Alexandra's saying, how much time do we allocate for a drawing?
We allocate the time we got.
It can often be very quick.
Yeah, it depends. It's sometimes you saw we did some fairly quick, rapid sketches there, but if it's a little bit more of a prestigious presentation, we would probably spend a little bit more time on them, and even do a mixture of some digital images and some.
That one's about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't worry by the time whether you're fast or slow. I would say that will come with experience. So don't fret if you think you're slow. Focus on getting it how you like it.
There's a really good question there about, you know, when you're looking at job applications, why does some job requirements only mention skills like CAD or Revit? It's a very good question. We will always be looking for Revit as a practice in the currency has become Revit. But we're also looking for some hand sketches, hand drawing abilities as well. So what I guess the best position to put yourself in is to have both.
And don't be afraid to say that you're better at one medium over another. So if you're better at Revit over sketching, don't pretend you're not what you are. Just say you are. And if you're better at sketching over Revit, focus on that. Be very honest. Absolutely. That's what we'd say for everyone going for an interview.
I mean, what you've seen today is our Revit. we're of a generation where we've not been trained in Revit. We're directors of the company, so it's not cost effective of us to be using Revit.
We're barely a day over 30.
So,
but unfortunately, we've been doing it for 30 odd years.
Yeah, but you know what we do value, we place a value on Revit skills, really important.
But we have people in the office that are 24 and 25 that can do Revit far better than we, and we can do manual drawings. So it's the combination of everyone. So everyone brings different skills. So really don't worry about that bit.
I've got a question from George Avery. He's got his hand up. George, do you want to come on and ask away?
Hi, sorry, my chat box isn't working very well. It keeps zooming in on your faces when I go on it. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
fine, yeah.
I just wanted to know, what are your opinions on like Procreate and Morpholio, you know, like digital drawing tools? What do you think about them compared to actual physical hand drawing?
I think probably a little bit sanitized. I know a couple of architects that have used sort of Mac drawing programs on tablets, going out and drawing them. For me, it kind of loses the disconnect of the pen and the felt tip. I think I would rather still draw like that and then scan it in and color. I think that's a more effective medium.
I've seen somebody using it very effectively. And again, I think it comes back to, if that's a medium that suits you and you're confident in that and you can communicate through that, then you know, I would develop that as well. I think that's, you know, the more you have in your kind of arsenal, the better, really. I think, you know, one of the key things we've found is, and some clients have said, they value the way that we can hand draw. So that's good feedback to hear, you know, that and the Leeds example I gave earlier, you know, that it was the hand drawings, that it was a rather senior design officer who was for the council, and he just identified with that, so that worked. So
just looking at the questions coming from there, she was talking about drawing to scale there.
Okay.
I think we're very good at drawing to scale because we've sort of tuned into the 1 to 5s, 10s, 20s. Just have your scale ruler with you when you're drawing and put yourself little guide notes on.
Yeah.
And there was another one there about Ellen, again, more inclined to do perspective drawings or scale drawings, both. Sometimes they can be not to scale, or sometimes, or more often, you are drawing to scale because you've got to show it in the context of buildings either side. But you really do need to be, if you're showing buildings either side, it's got to be appropriate, and you've got to know those heights as well.
Yeah. I think it's about whatever.
Stephanie, nice drawing, like that one.
Whatever aspect you're trying to communicate at the time, to think about that and make sure that whatever medium or whatever viewpoints or whatever combination of some perspectives, some sketches, some more conventional elevations, plans and sections. I mean, we can touch on that in another workshop perhaps. I mean, you know, we tend to design a lot of freehand plans as well. And that's probably the way we trained, you know, that we can, you know, I can sketch in different scales very quickly, whether it's 1 to 50, 1 to 20, 1 to 10, you know, 1 to 10, 1 to 100. Again, it's just building up that kind of feel. And so I think anything that you can develop is important.
So really, that's it. I hope in an hour we've whizzed through 2 old architects telling you some of the tricks of the trade. I think the basic was summing it up as enjoy it, practice.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing as a wrong drawing.
No.
Get your own style and be confident and just enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. It was fantastic.
No, not at all. That's been great fun.
We've enjoyed it. It was really, really good. I can't believe the time's gone.
Yeah.
I thought we'd be struggling for things to do and say, but it's been really, really enjoyable. Thank you.